The train lurched to a stop at the tiny station in Silver Creek, Wyoming, and Clara Morrison pressed her trembling hand against the cool window glass. Through tear-blurred eyes, she could barely make out the rough wooden platform and the handful of people waiting in the autumn wind. Somewhere out there was the man who'd answered her letter, the man who'd sent money for her train ticket, the man who expected a wife. She touched the purple bruise on her cheekbone, hidden beneath powder that had worn thin during the 3-day journey. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman of 23 who looked older, tired, defeated. The black eye was from her stepfather's final rage when he'd discovered her plan to leave Philadelphia. The cut on her lip had scabbed over, but still throbbed. "Last stop, miss," the conductor called, his voice gentle. He'd been kind to her throughout the journey, perhaps sensing her distress. Clara stood on shaking legs, smoothing down the only decent dress she owned, a plain grey wool that had seen better days. Her entire life fit into one battered carpetbag. She stepped onto the platform, and the Wyoming wind hit her like a physical blow, so different from the city air she'd known all her life. Her eyes scanned the small crowd. The letter had said he'd be waiting. Samuel Thornton, 35 years old, rancher, widower. The words had been simple, almost cold, but they'd offered her the one thing she desperately needed: escape. A man, separated from the others, and Clara's breath caught. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to block out the sun. Dark hair curled from beneath his worn hat, and several days' worth of beard shadowed his jaw. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run. He moved toward her with slow, deliberate steps, his boots heavy on the wooden planks. When he stopped in front of her, she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. This close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the way his hands clenched at his sides as if he didn't quite know what to do with them. "Miss Morrison?" His voice was deep, rough as gravel. "Yes." The word came out as barely a whisper. His eyes traveled over her face, and she watched them narrow, darken. His jaw tightened. "Who did that to you?" Clara's hand flew to her cheek instinctively. It's nothing. An accident before I left." "Don't lie to me." The words were harsh, but something in his tone, a thread of concern, maybe anger on her behalf, made fresh tears spring to her eyes. "My stepfather, when he found out I was leaving." She couldn't meet his gaze. "I'm sorry. I know I'm not what you expected. I understand if you want to send me back." Samuel was silent for so long that Clara finally forced herself to look up at him. What she saw in his face made her heart stutter. His features had gone hard as stone, but his eyes blazed with a fury that wasn't directed at her. No man should ever raise his hand to a woman. Each word was carefully controlled, as if he was fighting to keep his voice level. "Ever." He reached for her bag, and Clara flinched involuntarily. Samuel froze, his hands suspended in midair. Something flickered across his face. Pain, she thought, or maybe understanding. When he spoke again, his voice had gentled considerably. "I'm just going to carry your bag to the wagon, Miss Morrison. That's all. I won't touch you unless you say it's all right. You understand?" Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched as he picked up her pathetic carpetbag, as if it weighed nothing, and turned toward a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 brown horses. "We have about an hour's ride to the ranch," he said, helping her up onto the seat with careful, impersonal movements. "There's a blanket there if you get cold." The town of Silver Creek disappeared behind them as Samuel guided the horses onto a dirt road that cut through endless prairie. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the creak of the wagon wheels and the whisper of wind through the tall grass. Clara stole glances at the man beside her. In the letter, he'd written almost nothing about himself beyond the basics: rancher, widower, looking for a wife to help with the house and his young daughter. She'd been so desperate to escape Philadelphia that she hadn't asked questions. Now, sitting beside this giant of a man in the middle of nowhere, she wondered what kind of fool she'd been. "I should tell you about the arrangement," Samuel said suddenly, his eyes still fixed on the road ahead. "I have a 6-year-old daughter named Emma. My wife died 2 years ago in childbirth. The baby didn't make it either. Emma needs a mother. I need help with the house. That's why I wrote to the agency." "I understand." "Do you?" He glanced at her briefly. "I'm not looking for... I don't expect... What I mean is, this is a practical arrangement. You'll have your own room. I won't make demands on you that way." Clara felt her cheeks flush. She nodded, relief and something she couldn't quite name washing through her. "I'm a hard worker," she said quietly. "I can cook, clean, sew. I'll earn my keep, Mr. Thornton." "Samuel, just Samuel." He was quiet for a moment. "And you'll do more than earn your keep, Miss Morrison. You'll be my wife in the eyes of the law and the community. That means you'll be treated with respect by everyone, including me." The fierceness in his voice made her look at him again. His profile was harsh, uncompromising, but there was something in the set of his jaw, the way his hands gentle on the reins, that made her think maybe, just maybe, she'd found a safe place to land. The ranch appeared on the horizon like a painting. A sturdy two-story house painted white, a large red barn, several outbuildings, and fences stretching as far as she could see. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks already dusted with early snow. "It's beautiful," Clara breathed. Samuel's expression softened slightly. "It's home. Been in my family for 20 years. My father started it, and I've built it up since he passed." As they approached, the front door burst open and a small figure came running out. A girl with wild, dark curls, and Samuel's grey eyes threw herself at the wagon before it even fully stopped. "Papa! Papa! Is she here? Is she really here?" Samuel climbed down and caught the girl up in his arms, his entire demeanour transforming. The hard lines of his face softened, and something that might have been a smile tugged at his mouth. "Emma, what did I tell you about running at the horses? To not do it because they might spook and someone could get hurt," the girl recited dutifully, then wiggled in his arms. "But Papa, I was careful. I want to see her." Samuel set her down and turned to help Clara from the wagon. His hands spanned her waist easily as he lifted her down, and Clara was acutely aware of his strength, the warmth of his palms through the thin fabric of her dress. "Emma, this is Miss Morrison, Clara. She's going to be your new mama." Emma's eyes went wide, travelling over Clara with the brutal honesty of childhood. "You're pretty, but you have an ouchie on your face." "Emma," Samuel's voice held a warning. "It's all right," Clara said, kneeling down so she was eye level with the little girl. "I did have an accident, but it's getting better." Emma stepped closer, her small hand reaching out to gently touch Clara's cheek just beside the bruise. "Papa says we should be gentle with hurt things." "Are you a hurt thing?" The question, so innocent and yet so cutting, made Clara's throat tighten. "Maybe a little bit, yes." "Then we'll take care of you," Emma declared, with the confidence of childhood. "Papa's real good at taking care of things. He saved a baby bird once and a kitten, and last winter he helped Mrs. Patterson when her husband died, and..." "That's enough, little one," Samuel interrupted. But his voice was warm. "Why don't you show Miss Morrison to her room? I'll bring her bag up." The house was simple but well kept, with wooden floors that gleamed and curtains that looked hand-sewn. Emma led Clara up the stairs, chattering constantly about the ranch, her lessons, her friends in town, and 100 other things. "This is your room," Emma announced, throwing open a door. "It used to be Mama's sewing room, but Papa fixed it up special for you." Clara stepped inside and felt something in her chest tighten. The room was small but clean, with a real bed, not a cot or a pallet on the floor, like she'd had at her stepfather's house. Covered in what looked like a new quilt, there was a dresser, a chair by the window, and curtains that matched the quilt. "Papa made the quilt," Emma said proudly. "Well, Mrs. Patterson helped, but he picked the colours, blue like the sky. He said everyone should have something beautiful to look at." Samuel appeared in the doorway with her bag, and Clara turned to him, words failing her. "It's not much," he said gruffly, setting the bag down, "but it's yours. There's a lock on the door if you want it." Clara had to clear her throat. "Thank you. No one's ever..." She couldn't finish. No one had ever done something like this for her. Made a space just for her. Thought about what she might like. "Supper's in an hour," Samuel said, already backing away, as if uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Emma, come help me with the horses. Let Miss Morrison get settled." When they were gone, Clara sank onto the bed and let the tears come. But for the first time in months, they weren't tears of fear or despair. They were something else entirely. The following days fell into a rhythm that Clara had never experienced before. She woke before dawn to start breakfast, finding the kitchen already warm, because Samuel had lit the stove before heading out to tend the animals. Emma would appear, sleep-rumpled and chattering, helping set the table with more enthusiasm than skill. Samuel would come in as the sun rose, smelling of hay and cold air, and something indefinably masculine that made Clara's stomach flutter in ways she didn't quite understand. He was always careful around her, never moving too quickly, always keeping distance between them. "Good morning, Miss Morrison," he'd say, the same greeting every day. "Good morning, Samuel. Please call me Clara." Clara then. She learned his habits, how he took his coffee black and strong, how he had a sweet tooth but would never admit it, how he read to Emma every night before bed, his deep voice gentle as he brought storybook characters to life, how he was respected by the ranch hands but never cruel, firm but fair. And she learned that despite his size and rough appearance, Samuel Thornton was the gentlest man she'd ever known. The ranch employed 3 hands: old Ben, who'd worked for Samuel's father, young Tommy, who couldn't have been more than 19, and a quiet man named Carlos, who spoke better Spanish than English, but whose work ethic was unmatched. They took their meals in the bunkhouse, but sometimes Clara would bring them fresh bread or pie, and she'd see the way they looked at Samuel with respect that bordered on devotion. "Boss treats us fair," Ben told her one afternoon when she brought out coffee. "Never asks us to do nothing he wouldn't do himself. Works harder than any of us, truth be told." "He does work hard," Clara agreed, watching Samuel in the distance as he mended a fence, his shirt stretched tight across his broad shoulders. "You're good for him, Mrs. Thornton," Ben said, and Clara realized it was the first time anyone had called her that. "Haven't seen him smile this much since before Miss Sarah passed. Little Emma's happier too." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. "I'm trying my best." "You're doing more than that, Ma'am. You're bringing this place back to life." One morning, about 3 weeks after her arrival, Clara woke to find the first real snow of the season blanketing everything in white. Emma squealed with delight and begged to go outside. "After breakfast and chores," Samuel said firmly, but Clara could see the indulgent smile he tried to hide. After the morning work was done, Samuel bundled Emma in a coat that was slightly too small and looked at Clara. "You should come too. Have you ever built a snowman?" "No," Clara admitted. "We didn't. I wasn't allowed to play in the snow." Something dark flickered across Samuel's face, but he simply held out his hand. "Then it's time you learned." His hand was huge and warm, engulfing hers as he led her outside. The cold air bit at her cheeks, but the sun was brilliant, making the snow sparkle like diamonds. Emma was already rolling snow into a ball, her laughter ringing out across the yard. Samuel showed Clara how to pack the snow, how to roll it until it grew large enough for the base of the snowman. His hands covered hers, guiding her movements, and Clara was acutely aware of his closeness, the warmth radiating from his large body, the way his breath created small clouds in the cold air. "Like this," he murmured, his voice close to her ear. "You've got it." They worked together, building a snowman that was lopsided and imperfect, but beautiful to Clara's eyes. Emma found stones for the eyes and a carrot from the kitchen for the nose. "He needs a hat," Emma declared, and Samuel took off his own worn hat and placed it on the snowman's head. "Perfect," Clara said, and meant it. Samuel looked at her then, snowflakes catching in her hair, her cheeks pink from cold and laughter, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "What?" she asked softly. "You're happy," he said, wonder in his voice. "Really happy." "I am," and it was true. Standing in the snow with this man and this little girl, Clara felt something she'd never experienced before. Pure, uncomplicated joy. A snowball hit Samuel square in the back, and they both turned to see Emma giggling, already forming another one. "Oh, you're in trouble now, little one," Samuel said with mock sternness, but his eyes were dancing. He scooped up snow and lobbed it gently at Emma, who shrieked and ran. Before Clara knew what was happening, she was caught up in a snowball fight, laughing so hard her sides hurt, her worries forgotten in the simple pleasure of play. When Samuel's snowball accidentally hit her, he looked horrified. "Clara, I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." She hit him with one of her own right in the chest. His expression of shock was priceless. "Did you just..." "I did." She was already forming another snowball, feeling bold and reckless and alive. Samuel's grin was wide and genuine, transforming his usually serious face into something boyish and beautiful. "You're going to regret that, Mrs. Thornton." But his revenge was gentle, and when Emma decided they should all gang up on Papa instead, he let himself be pelted, laughing as he pretended to surrender. Later, after they'd come inside and Clara had made hot chocolate, they sat by the fire, Emma between them on the couch, falling asleep against Samuel's side. "Thank you," Clara said quietly. "For today, for everything." Samuel looked at her over Emma's head, his grey eyes soft. "You don't need to thank me for making you smile, Clara. That's what I want. Every day, for you to be happy here. I am happy. Happier than I've ever been." "Good." His hand reached across Emma's sleeping form, and his fingers brushed Clara's where they rested on the cushion. "That's all I want." The days grew shorter and colder, and Clara found herself settling into the rhythms of ranch life with increasing comfort. She learned to bake bread that rose perfectly, to make stews that could warm a man after hours in the freezing cold, to mend clothing so the stitches barely showed. But more than the domestic skills, she learned about the community. Once a week, Samuel would take them into town for supplies, and Clara began to meet the other residents of Silver Creek. There was Mrs. Patterson, the widow who'd helped with the quilt, who ran the general store with brisk efficiency and a kind heart. There was Reverend Walsh and his wife, who welcomed Clara warmly and invited them to Sunday services. There was the school teacher, Miss Henderson, who took an immediate interest in Emma's education, and there was gossip, which Clara quickly learned was the lifeblood of small-town life. "That's the mail-order bride," she heard one woman whisper to another as they passed. "Came all the way from Philadelphia. Wonder what she was running from." Clara felt her cheeks burn, but Samuel's hand found the small of her back, steady and reassuring. "Hold your head high," he murmured. "You have nothing to be ashamed of." But the whispers bothered her, especially when she overheard more pointed comments about how Samuel had needed a wife, any wife, to help with Emma and the house, that Clara was just convenient, practical. She tried not to let it show, but Samuel knew her well enough by now to see through her brave face. "What's wrong?" he asked that evening after Emma was in bed. "Nothing, Clara." His voice was gentle but firm. "We said we'd be honest with each other." She told him about the gossip, about the women who seemed to view her with suspicion or pity. Samuel's jaw tightened. "People talk, they always will, but their opinions don't matter. They do when they're talking about us. About why you married me. Why I married you." Samuel set down the book he'd been reading and turned to face her fully. "You want to know why I married you, Clara?" "Samuel, because I was drowning," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "After Sarah died, I was just going through the motions, working myself to exhaustion so I wouldn't have to feel anything. Emma needed more than I could give her. The house was falling apart. I was falling apart." He stood and paced to the window, looking out at the darkness. "I wrote that letter to the agency because I thought I needed help. A business arrangement, someone to cook and clean and take care of Emma. But then you stepped off that train." He turned back to her, and the intensity in his eyes made her tremble. "You were terrified and hurt and trying so hard to be brave, and something in me just woke up. I looked at you and I thought, I want to protect this woman. I want to make her smile. I want to give her every reason to stay." That first day, Clara, that first day I already knew you were going to change everything. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "So let them gossip," Samuel continued, moving closer. "Let them think whatever they want. I know the truth. You saved me just as much as I saved you, maybe more." "Samuel," she whispered, standing to close the distance between them. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything." His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb gentle against her skin. "Just stay. Keep being exactly who you are. Keep making this house a home. Keep making me want to be a better man. You're already the best man I know." His smile was soft, almost sad. "That's because you see me through eyes that are too kind. But I'll try to be worthy of what you see. I promise you that." She went up on her toes and kissed his cheek, feeling the rasp of his evening beard against her lips. "You already are." That night, lying in her bed, Clara thought about how strange life was. 6 weeks ago, she'd been trapped in Philadelphia, bruised and hopeless. Now she was in Wyoming, in a home where she was valued, with a little girl who called her Mama Clara, and a man who looked at her like she hung the moon. She was falling in love with Samuel Thornton, maybe had already fallen, and that terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. It was 2 weeks after her arrival when Emma came down with a fever. Clara heard the little girl crying in the night and went to her, finding her burning hot and restless. "Papa," Emma whimpered. "I want Papa." Clara found Samuel already awake in his room down the hall, pulling on his pants. "She's asking for you. She has a fever." He was in Emma's room in seconds, his large hand gentle on her forehead. "Get cool water and cloths," he said to Clara. "And there's willow bark tea in the kitchen cupboard." They worked through the night together, taking turns sponging Emma's hot skin, coaxing her to drink the bitter tea. Samuel's face was tight with worry, his movements careful and practiced, as if he'd done this before. Clara watched him cradle his daughter, murmuring soft reassurances in that deep voice, and felt her heart crack open a little more. "The fever's not breaking," Clara said around midnight, worry making her voice shake. "It will." Samuel's jaw was set, determined. "It has to. Should we send for the doctor?" "Not yet. The roads are bad after the snow, and Doc Murray lives 20 miles away. By the time someone got there and back," he shook his head. "We can handle this. We will handle this." But Clara could see the fear beneath his certainty, could see the way his hands trembled slightly when he touched Emma's flushed cheeks. "Tell me about Sarah," she said softly, wanting to understand. "About what happened?" Samuel was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, his voice rough and low, "The pregnancy was fine. Normal. Sarah was healthy. Happy. We were planning names, fixing up the nursery, and then the labor started and everything went wrong." He pressed the cloth to Emma's forehead with heartbreaking gentleness. "The baby was breech. Doc Murray tried to turn him, but Sarah was bleeding, and she was so small, and I could see in his eyes that he didn't think. The baby came, but he wasn't breathing, and Sarah, she just kept bleeding. Doc couldn't stop it." Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry." "She looked at me," Samuel continued, as if he couldn't stop now that he'd started. "Right at the end, she looked at me and said, 'Take care of Emma. Promise me.' And I did. I promised. But God, Clara, I was so angry. At her for leaving, at God for taking her, at myself for not being able to save her. For months I could barely look at Emma without seeing Sarah, without feeling like I'd failed." "You didn't fail," Clara said firmly. "You couldn't have known. You couldn't have stopped it. My head knows that, but my heart—" He touched his chest. "It still feels like I should have done something, anything." Clara moved around the bed to sit beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You're doing something now. You're taking care of Emma. You're being the father she needs. That's not failure, Samuel. That's love." He looked at her, and in the lamplight his eyes were wet. "What if I lose her too? What if—" "You won't." Clara took his hand, squeezed it hard. "Emma's strong. She has your stubbornness and your fight. This fever will break, and she'll be fine." "How do you know?" "Because she has too much to live for. She has a father who loves her more than life itself. And now she has me too, and I'm not going to let anything happen to her. Do you hear me? We're going to fight this together." Samuel's fingers tightened on hers, and he nodded, unable to speak. Around 3 in the morning, Clara was sponging Emma's arms when she felt the little girl's skin begin to cool. She checked her forehead, her neck, her chest. "Samuel, Samuel, the fever's breaking." He was beside them in an instant, his own hand confirming what Clara had felt. The tension drained from his body all at once, and he slumped forward, his head bowing. "Thank God," he breathed. "Thank God." Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Papa?" Her voice was weak but clear. "Mama Clara?" "We're here, sweetheart," Clara said, smoothing Emma's damp hair back from her forehead. "We're right here. I had bad dreams." "I know, baby," Samuel said, his voice rough. "But they're over now. You're going to be okay." Emma's eyes drifted closed again, but this time it was natural sleep, not fever-induced restlessness. Clara found herself sitting on the floor, her back against Emma's bed, exhausted. Samuel sat across from her, his long legs stretched out, his head tilted back against the wall. In the lamplight she could see the worry etched into his features, the grey threading through his dark hair at the temples, the lines around his eyes. He looked older than 35 in that moment, worn down by loss and responsibility and the weight of caring so deeply. "She's going to be fine," Clara said softly. "I know, but every time she gets sick I remember." He stopped, jaw working. "My wife, Sarah. She was fine one day, and then the labor started wrong, and I couldn't save her." Clara's heart clenched. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Sarah and we married young. We were friends more than anything else. She deserved better than what I could give her." He looked at Clara then, really looked at her, and she felt pity pinned by the intensity of his gaze. She deserved someone who could love her the way a woman should be loved. And you couldn't? I cared for her, respected her, but I never... He shook his head. I'm not good with words or feelings. I'm better with my hands, fixing things, building things. You're good with Emma. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Emma's easy. She tells me exactly what she's thinking, what she needs. Adults are more complicated. Clara found herself smiling too. We are, aren't we? They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to Emma's steady breathing. Can I ask you something? Samuel's voice was quiet in the darkness. Yes. Why did you answer my letter? A woman like you could have had better prospects than a rough rancher in the middle of nowhere. Clara laughed, but it was bitter. A woman like me? Samuel, I had no prospects. My mother died when I was 15. My father remarried 6 months later to a woman who saw me as free labor. When he died 2 years ago, I became her property to dispose of. She wanted me to marry her brother, a man twice my age, who looked at me like I was meat at the butcher's shop. She could feel Samuel's anger in the way the air seemed to tighten. I refused, Clara continued. So they made my life hell, locked me in my room, withheld food. And when I tried to leave, to find work, my stepfather, she touched her cheek. He made sure I knew my place. How did you get away? I stole the money from my stepfather's strongbox. Enough for the train ticket and a little extra. I'm a thief, Samuel. You should know that about the woman you married. She waited for judgment, for disgust. Instead, Samuel leaned forward, and in the dim light, she could see his eyes blazing. You took what was owed to you. That's not theft, that's justice. His voice was rough with emotion. And if I ever see that man, I'll make him regret every mark he put on you. Samuel, I mean it, Clara. You're under my protection now. Mine and the law's. You're Mrs. Thornton. No one touches you, ever again. The fierceness in his voice, the absolute certainty, made Clara's eyes sting with tears. Why are you so kind to me? Kind? He looked genuinely confused. I'm just treating you the way anyone should be treated, the way you deserve. No one's ever thought I deserved anything before. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he reached across the space between them. His hand, calloused and huge, gently covered hers where it rested on her knee. Then they were all fools, he said softly. Every last one of them. Clara looked down at their joined hands. His palm completely engulfed hers, warm and rough and steady. She could pull away. He'd let her, she knew, but she didn't want to. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For making me feel safe. His fingers tightened slightly on hers, and when she looked up, the expression on his face made her breath catch. It was raw, vulnerable, almost painful in its intensity. You are safe, Clara. I promise you that. As long as I'm breathing, you're safe. They stayed like that for a long time, hands joined in the quiet darkness, while Emma slept peacefully beside them. And Clara felt something shift inside her, some last wall crumbling away. She was falling for this man, this gentle giant who read bedtime stories and built quilts and made her feel like she mattered. And that terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. The next morning, Emma woke weak but clear-eyed, demanding pancakes and asking if she could play with her doll. Samuel laughed, the sound rich with relief, and swept his daughter up in a careful hug. Easy does it, little one. You need to rest today. But Papa, I feel better. And you'll feel even better after you rest and eat. He set her back in bed and looked at Clara. I'll sit with her. You should sleep. You've been up all night. So have you. I'm used to it. Ranch work means early mornings and late nights. His eyes were soft on her face. Please, Clara, rest. I'll call you if I need anything. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a weight. All right, but only for a few hours. She made it to her room and collapsed onto the bed, still fully dressed, intending to rest her eyes for just a moment. When she woke, the sun was low in the sky and someone had covered her with a blanket. She sat up, disoriented, and found a note on the bedside table in Samuel's careful handwriting. Emma is fine, ate lunch, and is napping. You needed the sleep. Supper when you wake. S. Clara held the note, tracing the letters with her finger, and felt warmth spread through her chest. This man who could barely string together a full conversation had taken the time to write her a note so she wouldn't worry, who'd covered her with a blanket and let her sleep, who was showing her in a dozen small ways that she mattered to him. Autumn deepened into winter, and Clara found herself settling into ranch life in ways she'd never imagined. The work was hard but satisfying. baking bread that actually rose properly, teaching Emma her letters, mending clothes by the fire while snow fell outside. And through it all, Samuel was there, a quiet, steady presence that made her feel anchored for the first time in her life. She noticed things about him, the way he hummed tunelessly when he worked in the barn, how he always saved the last piece of pie for her, the way his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking, with an expression she couldn't quite read. The ranch hands noticed too. One afternoon, while Clara was hanging laundry despite the cold, old Ben approached her with a knowing smile. "Never seen the boss this content," he said, helping her pin up a sheet. "Man's been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for 2 years. Nice to see him lighter." "I don't know that I have anything to do with that," Clara said, but she felt her cheeks warm. "Don't you?" Ben chuckled. "Mrs. Thornton, that man watches you like you hung the moon. Saw him smile the other day when you brought lunch out to the south pasture. Actually smiled. That's rare as hen's teeth." Clara ducked her head, pleasure and something like fear warring in her chest. "He's a good man, that he is. And you're good for him. Don't let nobody tell you different." The temperature dropped as November settled in, and with it came new challenges. A section of fence collapsed under heavy snow, and 3 cows wandered onto a neighboring ranch. The barn roof needed repairs before the real winter storms hit. Samuel worked from before dawn until well after dark, coming in exhausted and covered in snow. Clara started staying up to greet him, no matter how late. She'd have hot coffee ready and soup warming on the stove, and sometimes she'd help him out of his frozen coat, her fingers fumbling with the ice-stiff buttons. "You don't have to wait up," he'd tell her. But there was something in his eyes, gratitude maybe, or something deeper, that made her think he was glad she did. "I want to," she'd say, and it was true. She wanted to make sure he ate, wanted to see him safe home, wanted those few quiet moments together while the house slept around them. One such night, as she helped him with his coat, her fingers brushed his neck and she felt him shiver. Their eyes met, and the air between them seemed to crackle with something unspoken. "You're freezing," she said, her voice coming out breathier than intended. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. His lips had a blue tinge, and when she touched his hand, it was like ice. "Samuel Thornton, you're going to catch your death." She grabbed a blanket from the couch and wrapped it around his shoulders, her hands lingering, perhaps longer than necessary. "Sit by the fire. I'll get you something hot to drink." She brought him coffee laced with a touch of whiskey from the bottle she'd found in the cupboard, and he wrapped his large hands around the mug gratefully. "You're too good to me," he murmured. "No such thing." He caught her hand as she moved to leave, his fingers cold, but his grip firm. "Clara, I need you to know, this isn't just Samuel." She knelt beside his chair, concerned by the unusual struggle for words. "You matter," he finally said, the words coming out rough and urgent. "To me, to Emma, to this place. You're not just convenient or practical, you're—" He shook his head, frustrated. "I'm saying this all wrong." Clara's heart was pounding. "You're saying it just fine." "Am I?" His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, sending shivers up her arm that had nothing to do with the cold. "Because I want you to understand that you have a home here, for as long as you want it, no matter what." "Samuel, Emma's voice called from upstairs. "Papa, Mama Clara, I had a bad dream." The moment broke, and Samuel released her hand with visible reluctance. "I'll go. We'll both go," Clara said, and the smile he gave her made her knees weak. They settled Emma together, Samuel sitting on one side of her bed and Clara on the other. Emma grabbed both their hands, one small palm in each of theirs. "I dreamed you went away, Mama Clara," Emma said, her voice small, like my first mama did. Clara felt her throat tighten. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Promise?" Clara looked across Emma's small body to Samuel, whose grey eyes were intense on her face. "I promise," she said, and knew she meant it with everything in her. After Emma fell back asleep, they stood in the hallway together. The house was quiet, except for the wind outside and the ticking of the grandfather clock downstairs. "She loves you," Samuel said softly. "Really loves you. You're her mama now, in every way that matters. I love her too. So much it scares me sometimes. I know the feeling." His hand came up, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, intimate, and Clara's breath caught. "Loving someone means being terrified of losing them. Is that why you keep everyone at arm's length?" His hand dropped, but he didn't step back. "Maybe. After Sarah, it was easier not to feel anything. safer. And now I'm discovering that safe isn't the same as living. His eyes searched her face in the dim light. You make me want to live again, Clara. Really live. She placed her hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. You make me feel alive, too. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm not just surviving. I'm actually living. Samuel covered her hand with his own, holding it against his chest. Clara, yes, I'm falling for you. Have been, maybe since that first day. And I know that wasn't part of our arrangement. And if you don't feel the same way, that's all right. I won't. She kissed him, rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his, cutting off his words with action, because she couldn't find the right words herself. For a heartbeat, Samuel stood frozen. Then his arms came around her, careful and strong, and he kissed her back with a gentleness that made her want to cry. When they parted, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. I'm falling for you too, she whispered. I think I have been for weeks. I was just too scared to admit it. Scared of what? That you'd think I was just grateful, or trying to secure my position, or never. His hands framed her face, tilting it up so she had to meet his eyes. Clara, what I feel for you has nothing to do with gratitude or arrangements. When I look at you, I see the woman I want to wake up next to every morning, the woman I want to grow old with, the woman who makes this house a home and my heart feel full. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and he brushed them away with his thumbs. I love you, he said. The words simple, but weighted with sincerity. I love your strength and your kindness. I love how you sing while you cook, and how you never give up even when things are hard. I love the way Emma lights up when you walk in the room. I love you too, she interrupted, laughing through her tears. Samuel, I love you so much. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Clara felt herself melt into him. His hands were gentle on her waist, respectful even in passion, and she loved him all the more for it. When they finally parted, both flushed and breathless, Samuel rested his forehead against hers once more. We should talk about what this means, he said, his voice rough. About us, about our marriage. Tomorrow, Clara said. Tonight, can we just be? Yeah. His arms tightened around her. Yeah, we can do that. They stood in the hallway for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, and Clara thought that this moment of pure connection and love was worth every hardship she'd endured to get here. One evening in late November, a blizzard struck without warning. Samuel came in from checking on the animals, covered in snow, his face red with cold. It's bad out there, he said, shaking snow from his coat. Going to be a long night. Emma was already asleep, and Clara had made stew that simmered on the stove, filling the house with warmth and the scent of herbs. Sit, she said to Samuel. I'll get you some food. He obeyed, which was unusual. Samuel Thornton was not a man who often let others care for him, but he looked exhausted, and when she set the bowl in front of him, their fingers brushed. That small contact sent a jolt through her that had nothing to do with static from the cold. You should eat too, he said, and Clara realized she'd been standing there staring at him. She sat across from him, and they ate in companionable silence, listening to the wind howl outside. I never thought I'd like winter, Clara said eventually. In Philadelphia, it was just cold and grey and miserable. But here, there's something beautiful about it, even when you can't see 10 feet in front of you because of the snow. Samuel's tone was dry, but she could hear the smile in it. Even then, because I'm warm and safe inside. He set down his spoon, his grey eyes serious. Are you happy here, Clara? Really happy? The question caught her off guard. Yes, I am. Are you unhappy with me? God, no. The words came out forcefully, surprising them both. You're good with Emma, good with the house. The men respect you. You work harder than anyone I've ever known, and you never complain. But I worry that this isn't what you wanted, that you settled because you had to, not because you chose to. Clara considered this carefully. When I got on that train in Philadelphia, I was running away from something. I thought that's all this would ever be, an escape. But Samuel, somewhere along the way, I stopped running from and started running toward. This place, Emma, she paused, gathering courage. This is where I want to be. The look he gave her could have melted the snow outside. You mean that? I do. Samuel stood slowly, moving around the table to where she sat. He crouched down beside her chair, bringing himself closer to her eye level, and Clara's heart hammered in her chest. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low and rough, and I need you to know I don't expect anything from you. This doesn't change our arrangement unless you want it to. What is it? I've been trying to fight it, thought it was wrong, considering the circumstances. But Clara, I can't anymore. He took a breath. I'm falling in love with you. Maybe already fallen. When you smile at Emma, when you sing while you cook, when you fall asleep in the chair with mending in your lap because you've worked yourself to exhaustion, every damn moment, I fall a little more. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this massive, gentle man who was looking at her like she was something precious. You don't have to say anything, he continued quickly. I know this wasn't part of our deal. I just needed you to know, needed you to understand that when I look at you, I don't see an arrangement or a convenience. I see my wife, the woman I want beside me for the rest of my life. Samuel, I'm not asking for anything, Clara. Your own room, your own space. That doesn't change unless you... She kissed him, leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, cutting off his words with an action that said everything she couldn't put into words. For a moment, Samuel froze. Then his hand came up to cup her face with heartbreaking gentleness, his thumb tracing her cheekbone as he kissed her back with a tenderness that made her want to cry. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, Clara whispered. I think I have for weeks, but I was afraid to admit it. Afraid you'd think I was just grateful, or trying to secure my position. Never. His voice was fierce. You never have to be afraid with me, not of anything. Then I'm not afraid to tell you that I love you, Samuel Thornton. I love your gentleness and your strength. I love how you are with Emma. I love that you hum when you work and save me the last piece of pie. I love... He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Clara felt something inside her unfurl like a flower opening to the sun. This was what she'd been missing all her life. Not just safety or security, but this, being cherished, desired, loved. Clara, he murmured against her lips. My Clara. Yours, she agreed and felt him shudder. We should stop, he said, though he made no move to pull away. You deserve courting, flowers and proper wooing, and Samuel, you fixed up a room for me before I even arrived. You made me feel welcome when I showed up bruised and broken. You've been courting me since the day we met. You just didn't call it that. He pulled back enough to look at her, one hand still cradling her face. I want to do this right. Clara, I want to be the husband you deserve, not just in name, but in every way. If you'll have me, I'll have you, she said softly. If you'll have me, broken pieces and all. You're not broken. You're the strongest woman I've ever known. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Clara felt heat pool in her belly. And beautiful. God, you're so beautiful. I'm ordinary. No, the word was firm. You're extraordinary, and I'm going to spend every day of the rest of my life showing you that. The blizzard raged outside, but inside, wrapped in Samuel's arms by the warmth of the stove, Clara had never felt safer or more loved. They didn't rush things. Despite the confession of love, Samuel was true to his word about courting her properly. He brought her wildflowers from the fields. He read to her in the evenings after Emma went to bed. He held her hand when they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink, and slowly, carefully, they learned each other. Clara learned that Samuel loved being touched. A hand on his arm, fingers running through his hair, a kiss on his cheek as she passed. He soaked up affection like a man who'd been starved for it. Samuel learned that Clara needed words. She'd spent so long being told she was worthless that she needed to hear she was valued, appreciated, loved. And he gave her those words freely. His rough voice gentle as he told her she was beautiful, that her laugh was his favorite sound, that coming home to her was the best part of his day. Christmas came, and with it a surprise. Samuel had ridden into town and come back with packages. For you, he said to Clara, handing her a wrapped parcel. Inside was fabric, beautiful deep green wool, enough for a new dress. Samuel, this is too much. You've been mending that grey dress since you arrived. You deserve something new, something that makes you feel pretty. You make me feel pretty, she said, and watched colour rise in his cheeks. Still, I want you to have it. For Emma, he'd brought a doll with a china face and real hair. The little girl squealed and hugged him so hard he laughed. What about you, Papa? Did you get anything for you? Samuel glanced at Clara, and the heat in his eyes made her pulse quicken. I have everything I want right here. The week between Christmas and the New Year passed in a haze of happiness. Clara worked on her new dress, her fingers flying over the fabric as she created something beautiful for herself for the first time in her life. Emma helped, or tried to, her small hands earnest if not always helpful. Samuel spent the days working on repairs around the ranch, but he always made time in the evenings to sit with them, reading or just watching Clara sew while Emma played with her new doll. "What are you thinking about?" Clara asked one evening, catching him staring at her with an unreadable expression. "How different everything is now," he said quietly. "A year ago this house was so quiet, so empty. Now it's full of life, full of you." Clara set down her sewing and moved to sit beside him on the couch. "Do you miss the quiet?" "Not even a little." His arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I never want to go back to how things were before you came." Emma looked up from her dolls. "Me neither. I like having a mama again." "And I like having you both," Clara said, her heart full. "This is the best Christmas I've ever had." "Even though we didn't have much?" Samuel asked. "Especially because we didn't need much. Just each other." New Year's Eve came, and with it, a small celebration. Clara made a special dinner, and Samuel brought out a bottle of wine that he'd been saving. They let Emma stay up until midnight, though she fell asleep on the couch around 10. Samuel carried her to bed, and when he came back down, he found Clara standing at the window, looking out at the star-filled sky. "Making wishes for the new year?" he asked, coming to stand behind her. "Just thinking how much can change in a few months. In October I was terrified and alone. Now I'm home." She turned to face him. "This is home, Samuel. You and Emma and this ranch. This is where I belong." His hands came up to frame her face. "And you're not going anywhere? Not unless you send me away." "Never." The word was fierce, absolute. "You're mine, Clara. For as long as you'll have me, then I guess I'm yours forever." They kissed as the old year gave way to the new, and Clara thought about fresh starts and second chances and how sometimes the scariest decisions led to the most beautiful destinations. The winter deepened, and with it came new routines. Sunday mornings meant church in town, where Clara was slowly being accepted by the other women. Mrs. Patterson took her under her wing, introducing her around and deflecting the worst of the gossip with practiced ease. "They'll come around," she told Clara one Sunday after service. "Most of them are just jealous. Samuel Thornton is the best catch in 3 counties, and you got him." "I didn't catch him," Clara protested. "It was an arrangement." Mrs. Patterson gave her a knowing smile. "Honey, the way that man looks at you has nothing to do with arrangements. That's pure, honest love. Anyone with eyes can see it." And it was true. Samuel made no effort to hide his feelings anymore. He'd take Clara's hand in public, pull her close when they walked together, kiss her cheek when he thought no one was looking. The town had to accept that Samuel Thornton was head over heels for his mail-order bride. One February afternoon, Clara was in the general store when she overheard 2 women talking. "Did you see her dress? The green one must have cost Samuel a fortune. He always was generous. Remember how he helped the Patterson family after Mr. Patterson died? Paid off their debts without asking for anything in return? That's true. And the little girl seems happy. Emma practically glows these days. Still, it must be strange, taking in a complete stranger. What do they really know about her?" Clara's hands tightened on the fabric she was examining. She'd hoped the whispers would have stopped by now. "What I know," came Mrs. Patterson's voice, sharp and clear, "is that Clara Thornton is one of the kindest, hardest working women I've ever met. And if you 2 have nothing better to do than gossip about a woman who's done nothing but good since she arrived, then perhaps you should examine your own lives more closely." The store fell silent. Clara felt her cheeks burn, but she held her head high as she approached the counter. "Thank you," she said quietly to Mrs. Patterson as she paid for her purchases. "Don't you pay them any mind," the older woman said firmly. "You're good people, Clara. Anyone who matters can see that." That evening, Clara told Samuel about the incident. She expected him to be angry, but instead he just pulled her into his arms. "I'm sorry you have to deal with that," he said into her hair. "But Mrs. Patterson is right. You're good people, the best. And anyone who can't see that isn't worth our time. It still hurts." "I know." He pulled back to look at her. "But you know what helps? Living well. Being happy, showing them that their opinions don't matter because we have each other. When did you get so wise?" "Since I met a woman who taught me what really matters." He kissed her forehead. "Come on. Emma wanted to show you the picture she drew at school. Something about a family tree." They found Emma at the kitchen table, carefully coloring a drawing. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands, a very tall one, a medium one, and a small one. "That's us," Emma announced proudly. Papa, Mama Clara, and me. We're a family. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. It's beautiful, sweetheart. I'm going to hang it in my room, Emma declared, so I can see it every day and remember that I have the best family in the whole world. Samuel's arm came around Clara's waist, and she leaned into him. This, she thought, this is what matters, not the gossip or the whispers or the doubts. Just this, being together, being a family, being loved. The days grew longer as winter began to loosen its grip, and with the changing season came new life. The first calf of spring was born on a chilly March morning, and Emma insisted on helping Samuel check on the mother and baby. Clara watched from the barn door as Samuel patiently explained to Emma how to approach the nervous cow, how to make sure the calf was nursing properly. His hands, so large and rough, were infinitely gentle as he checked the baby over. He's perfect, Papa, Emma breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. He is. Strong and healthy, just like he should be. Can I name him? Samuel glanced at Clara, who nodded encouragingly. Sure, little one. What do you want to call him? Hope, Emma said immediately, because he was born in spring, and spring is when everything comes back to life. Hope is a good name for new things. Samuel's voice was rough when he answered. That's a perfect name, Emma. Just perfect. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, still chattering about the new calf, Samuel found Clara in the kitchen washing the supper dishes. Hope, he said, leaning against the counter. She named him Hope. It's a good name. It is. He was quiet for a moment. You know, when Sarah died, I thought Hope died with her. Thought I'd just go through the motions for the rest of my life, work the ranch, raise Emma, and that would be enough. And now I have hope again, for the future, for us, for more good things to come. He moved closer, his hands settling on her waist. You gave me that, Clara. You gave me back hope. She turned in his arms, her wet hands coming up to frame his face. You gave me hope too. Hope that I could be loved, that I could have a real home, that I could be more than what my stepfather said I was. You are so much more, he murmured, pressing his forehead to hers. You're everything. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other and the quiet of the house, while outside the first real warmth of spring whispered through the Montana darkness. That night, after Emma was asleep and the fire had burned low, Samuel walked Clara to her bedroom door, as had become their habit. Thank you for today, she said softly, for the fabric, for making Emma so happy, for everything. Clara, her name was a prayer on his lips. Can I come in, just to talk? She opened the door, wider in answer. They sat on her bed, and Samuel took her hand, his fingers lacing with hers. I've been thinking, he said slowly, about us, about this marriage. Clara's stomach dropped. What about it? We stood in front of the judge and said vows, but I want to say them again, and mean them differently this time. He turned to face her fully. I, Samuel Thornton, take you, Clara Morrison, to be my wife. Not because it's convenient or practical, but because I love you, because I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night, because you've made this house a home and filled the empty places in my heart. Tears streamed down Clara's face. I, Clara Morrison, take you, Samuel Thornton, to be my husband, because you showed me what love really is, because you made me feel worthy and cherished and safe, because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Clara, his voice was strained. Can I? Yes. She didn't even know what he was asking, but the answer was yes. He kissed her deeply, his hands trembling as they cupped her face. Clara's fingers found the buttons of his shirt, and she felt him shudder. Are you sure? He breathed against her mouth. We can wait. I don't want to rush. I'm sure. I want this. I want you. I'll be gentle, he promised, and she believed him. I'll take care of you. And he did. With hands that were rough from work, but gentle as a whisper, he showed her what it meant to be loved completely. Every touch was reverent, every kiss a promise. When she tensed, uncertain, he soothed her with soft words and softer caresses until she relaxed into him, trusting him completely. Beautiful, he murmured against her skin. So beautiful, my Clara, my wife. And for the first time in her life, Clara felt beautiful, felt desired, felt loved in a way that transcended the physical into something almost sacred. Afterward, wrapped in Samuel's arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady thunder of his heartbeat, Clara finally understood what home meant. It wasn't a place, it was this, being held by the man she loved, safe and cherished and whole. "I love you," she whispered. His arms tightened around her. "I love you too, always." Spring came to Wyoming with an explosion of wildflowers and new life. The ranch was busy with calving season, and Clara found herself working alongside Samuel more often, their partnership extending beyond the house to the land itself. She was in the garden one morning, planting vegetables, when she felt the familiar wave of nausea. It had been happening for a week now, usually in the mornings, and she'd been trying to ignore it. But she couldn't ignore the other signs. The tenderness in her breasts, the way certain smells made her stomach turn, the exhaustion that hit her in the afternoons. Emma found her sitting in the garden, one hand on her still flat stomach, tears streaming down her face. "Mama Clara, are you hurt?" The name Emma had started using months ago, the name that never failed to make Clara's heart swell, brought fresh tears. "No, sweetheart, I'm not hurt." "Then why are you crying?" Because she was scared, because she was happy, because she was going to have Samuel's child, and she didn't know how to feel about it. Samuel found them there, concern immediate on his face. "Clara, what's wrong?" "Emma, go see if the chickens have laid any eggs," Clara said gently. When the little girl had run off, she looked up at Samuel. "I need to tell you something." He knelt beside her immediately, his hands finding hers. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Samuel went completely still, his face unreadable. "Samuel, please say something." "A baby." His voice was barely a whisper. "We're going to have a baby. I know you lost Sarah and your son, and I know this might be—" He crushed her to him, his whole body shaking. "Thank you," he choked out. "Thank you. You're not angry? Or scared?" He pulled back, and she was shocked to see tears on his face. "Scared, yes, terrified of losing you, but angry? Clara, you've given me everything. A second chance at love, a mother for Emma, and now another child. How could I be anything but grateful?" "I'm scared too," she admitted. "What if something goes wrong? Then we'll face it together. But nothing's going to go wrong." He placed his large hand over her stomach with infinite gentleness. "Because you're strong and you're healthy, and I'm going to take care of you every single day. Whatever you need, it's yours." And he did. As Clara's belly grew through the summer, Samuel was relentless in his care. He insisted she rest more, took over the heavier chores, massaged her swollen feet at night. He talked to her stomach, telling their unborn child stories about the ranch, about Emma, about how much they were already loved. The baby was born on a crisp October morning, 1 year to the day, after Clara had arrived in Silver Creek. The labor was hard, but mercifully quick, with the doctor from town and Mrs. Patterson attending. And when Samuel was finally allowed in the room, and saw Clara holding their red-faced, squalling son, the look of pure love and wonder on his face was something she knew she'd remember forever. "He's perfect," Samuel breathed, one finger gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "You're perfect. God, Clara, I love you so much." Emma appeared at the door, eyes wide. "Is that my brother?" "Come meet him," Clara said softly. The little girl climbed carefully onto the bed, looking at the baby with awe. "What's his name?" Clara looked at Samuel, and they shared a smile. They'd discussed this. "James," Samuel said, "after your grandfather, Emma. James Samuel Thornton." "Jamie," Emma declared. "I'm going to call him Jamie, and I'm going to teach him everything." Samuel laughed, the sound rich and full. He sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Emma, one hand on Clara's shoulder, looking at his family with an expression of complete contentment. "How did I get so lucky?" he murmured. "We both did," Clara said, reaching up to touch his face. "We both did." The years that followed were not without challenges. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick animals and lean times. But through it all, Samuel and Clara faced everything together, their love growing deeper with each passing season. Emma grew into a kind, strong young woman who helped run the ranch alongside her father. Jamie was a curious, adventurous boy who followed Samuel everywhere, soaking up everything his father taught him about the land and the animals. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep and the house was peaceful, Samuel and Clara would sit on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. "Do you ever think about that day at the train station?" Samuel asked one such evening, Clara tucked against his side. "Every day," she admitted. "I think about how scared I was, how lost." And now she looked up at him, This man who had shown her what love really meant. Now I'm found. We both are. He kissed her, soft and sweet, and Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here, the pain and fear that had driven her from Philadelphia, the desperate hope that had made her answer a stranger's letter, the tears she'd shed on that platform, certain she was making a terrible mistake. She'd been so wrong. This wasn't a mistake. It was fate, destiny, a second chance at life. "I love you, Samuel Thornton," she whispered. "I love you, Clara Thornton. Thank you for taking a chance on a rough cowboy with more heart than sense. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for loving me when I thought I was unlovable, for giving me a home. You gave me one too," he said softly. "The day you stepped off that train, broken and scared and beautiful, you gave me a reason to live again, to love again. You saved me just as much as I saved you." And there, under the Wyoming stars, with the man she loved and the family she'd made, Clara Morrison Thornton finally understood what it meant to be truly happy. Not because life was perfect or easy, but because she was loved, completely, unconditionally, eternally loved. The mail-order bride who'd arrived in tears had found something she never expected, a love that healed old wounds, a family that chose her, and a home that would always be hers. And as Samuel pulled her closer, his lips finding hers in the twilight, Clara smiled against his kiss and thanked God for train tickets, desperate letters, and lonely cowboys who turned out to be everything she never knew she needed. This was her happy ending, her new beginning, her forever, and it was perfect.